The Jewish view of God is not static or frozen in any time or place. It is constantly growing, changing, expanding. For even though God is constant, people are forever growing and developing. So each person in each generation must discover, understand, describe, and relate to God in his or her own way, out of his or her own life experiences. The Amidah, one of the central prayers of the Jewish worship service, recited by traditional Jews 3 times each day, teaches this very lesson. The prayer begins with the words, "Praised are you, O Lord, our God and God of our ancestors, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob." Why the repetition? Hebrew is a concise language. It does not use words that it does not need. But in this prayer, instead of saying God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it repeats the word God 3 times. God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob. The prayer book writers understood that each of these founding fathers of Judaism had to create a separate, individual, personal relationship with God, each in his own time. Isaac's world was not the world of his father. Jacob's world was not the world of his father or his grandfather. Each man had to discover God for himself. For each man had his own needs and expectations of God. Because each lived at a different moment and in different circumstance, each had a unique relationship to establish. The very name, Yisrael, Israel, by which the Jewish people is known, means to wrestle with God. Genesis chapter 32, verse 29. Indicating that each and every person must seek and find God in his or her own way. So at various periods of history, often in response to the political situation or philosophical climate of the moment, the strivings with God of a particular person or of a group of people, reflecting the collective consciousness, demonstrate the ever-evolving, ever-developing relationship of the Jewish people with God. While belief in God is central to the Jewish religious quest, and is for most an uplifting, enriching, highly satisfying, integral part of being a Jew, there are no doctrines, dogma, or creeds of Judaism to which a Jew must adhere. Whilst it is very possible that Jews can set themselves outside the mainstream of Jewish thought, the spectrum of Jewish belief throughout the centuries has been very wide and very tolerant. There are a few basic Jewish concepts about God on which most Jewish thinkers throughout history agree, although there is significant disagreement over even some of these tenets. That God exists, that God is one, that God created and, to a greater or lesser extent, supervises the events of the universe, that God gave humankind free will, that while God is the God of all humanity, God and the Jewish people have a special covenantal relationship, and that each human being can approach God in an individual, personal way and create an intimate relationship with God. Still, Judaism requires no profession of faith, other than the personal choice to recite the prayer and the declaration, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one." No examination of faith, no demand for any certain level or demonstration of faith, and exacts no penalty nor imposes any consequence for lack of faith. Rather, each Jew is free to believe in God and to form a personal relationship with God as he or she chooses. The contemporary Jewish thinker Eli Wiesel has taught that Jews can argue with God, fight with God, or be angry with God, but cannot ignore God. Since the Jewish concept of God and the relationship with God has changed, developed, and grown throughout Jewish history, the task of contemporary Jews now is to take their place in the ongoing process of the Jewish quest to find and know God. Like the Jews of old, who wrestled with God in order to create a relationship with God, contemporary Jews, who are called by the name Israel, are to strive to wrestle with God, to seek and find God in this time and this place.